Hello and welcome back to Overbooked. I'm Amanda and today we're going over my Indigenous Read-a-thon TBR. The Indigenous Read-a-thon is created by Brody at Eat To Brody, I think that's how you say it, and Michelle at Thor Wants Another Letter. I am really excited about this read-a-thon because I have really wanted to read more Native authors. I've wanted to read more Native stories, and I just it's just been on me that I haven't gotten to that, and I just haven't done so, and I'm just really glad that there's this read-a-thon that I can participate in, and it's just really kicking me in the butt to be like, okay, make this a priority. I'm just really excited for this. I'm really excited to read more Indigenous authors. I'm excited to read more Indigenous stories, so yes, thank you, Michelle and Brody, for doing this and putting this on, so very grateful. So they have 9 reading prompts that I will go through. I'm not gonna lie, I don't think I'm gonna do very well reading through all of these prompts, mainly because I just have books that I really want to read and some of them don't fit into the prompts. So we'll get started and I'll kind of show you what I mean, but let's do it. So the first prompt is to read a book by an intersectional Native author or about an intersectional Native character. So for the book that I'm gonna do for this one is called Johnny Appleseed by Joshua Whitehead. And I believe that Joshua Whitehead is also a queer Indigenous author. So Johnny Appleseed is a book about Johnny Appleseed, who is a young Indigenous queer individual, and he is working off of the reservation as a cyber sex worker, and he soon learns that he has to come home in about a week to attend his father's funeral. So it's like this, I'm guessing from off of the description of Goodreads, it's like this journey for Johnny going through this week leading up to this funeral and his life and what he's going through during this time. It has really good reviews. I've heard good things about it, so I'm really excited, and I'll be listening to the audiobook. I'm also going to be using this book for another prompt that we'll get to later. All right, so the next prompt is a new to you, which is just to read a book that's a new to you Native author. And I have never read Louise Erdrich's books, but I have always wanted to try, and so she's new to me because I haven't read her before. And I've heard really good things about the Roundhouse, so I will be reading this. So this book is about how a woman on a reservation is attacked, and she does not want to relay any of the information. She's so traumatized, and her husband, who is a tribal judge, is doing all he can to solve this mystery of who did this crime and what happened. And we have our main character, Joe, who is the son of the woman who got attacked, and he decides to take it into his own hands to figure out what's going on. And so I've also heard very good things about this book, and I'm just very intrigued, really excited to start this one. I also just picked up another book at the library called The Painted Drum by her as well. I don't know if I'll have time to get to it because I'd rather read The Roundhouse first and then read this. So we'll see what happens. Prompt number 3 is read a book other than the 5 civilized tribes. So the 5 civilized tribes are Cherokee, Chickasaw, Chickasaw, Creek, and Somali. So for the book for this, I'm going to be reading a book called Winter Counts, which is very, I think, popular right now, and a lot of people are talking about it. And it's by David Hiska Winnibally Whedon. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. So he is a local enforcer on the Rosebud Indian Reservation in South Dakota, which is actually where I grew up. So I'm very excited to read this story because I just feel like it's something that I really should read, as like a story about Indigenous lives in my home state. So he is enlisted to take the law into his own hands, essentially, and figure out a crime. And this thriller mystery kind of takes him to Denver, where he has to continue to put the pieces together. And I am just really excited to read this. It's a mystery thriller. I've been reading a couple thrillers recently, and so I'm excited to kind of continue the trend and start this one. Okay, so the next prompt is to read a Native authored book in the middle grade age range. So I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a huge fan of middle grade, and I'm not even a huge fan of YA. So I found another book called Love After the End by Joshua Whitehead, and it is intended for young adult, and it's a collection of short stories that talk about the Indigenous queer experience and by Indigenous queer authors. So I'm just very excited to read this. I've heard very good things. It has really great reviews. So I'm going to use this as a middle grade book, even though it is classified as young adult. I just think that I'm going to get a lot more enjoyment out of this. And I'm just really also just want to read this. So this is an example of me adjusting the prompts so I can read what I want to read. But very excited. Free space. So this is a prompt. Since it's like on a bingo card, it's like listed as a free space. So feel free to like place any book you read that doesn't fulfill a challenge into the space. So what I think I'm going to attempt to do is read the book Heartbeat of Wounded Knee. And that is by David Traher, and that is like a Native American history from 1890 to the present. And it is a pretty big chunker. It's about 526 pages. I am going to attempt to listen to it on audiobook, but I'm just really excited. It's a nonfiction, a deep dive into the history of Indigenous life here in America. And I just think it's going to be very, very informative and just so good to read. So I'm very excited. I don't know if I'll finish it in the month of November. It's about I think the audiobook is about 18 hours, which is a similar length from that I read from Stamped from the Beginning. So, and that took me about a month. So we'll see how that goes. I would really like to read this one. So we're going to see how it goes. So the next prompt is a buddy read. So I'm supposed to find somebody to read a book, a book by a Native author with. I have not found anybody. I haven't really taken the time to reach out to anybody and see if anybody else is reading. They also have a group book, which is called Heartbeat Braves. And they said that you could use this as the group book or as your buddy read. Unfortunately, I cannot find this book anywhere on any of my library audiobook devices or on Scribd, which I pay for, and that's not in my library. So I won't be reading this book, but I hope to eventually get to it sometime when I can actually check out more books from my library. My library does like interlibrary loans again. So really hoping to get to that, and I will definitely mark it on Goodreads as something that I want to read. So the next prompt is to read something other than the US. So read a book that has an author indigenous to somewhere other than the United States. And I am combining that one with the Johnny Appleseed by Joshua Whitehead book, because Joshua Whitehead is a indigenous Canadian, so Canada outside the US. Combining. Then finally we have non-bookish media, which is the last prompt, and that is to read, watch, or listen to content other than a book created by a Native American. So what I did is, I think I've talked about this site before, is Intersectional Environmentalism has this whole site, and they talk about environmentalism between different groups of people and ethnicities, and they have a list of where you can go into further resources by different groups of people, and they have an indigenous category. So I went there and I found 2 documentaries that I'd really like to watch, and one is There's Something in the Water, and that is a documentary about the Dakota Access Pipeline that goes through North Dakota, and I think it goes around numerous states through the Midwest, and it would go under, I think it was the Missouri River, and that is like the main source of water for the Standing Rock reservation, so it would, be a high chance of contaminating their water. And so the documentary looks at them protesting and fighting to stop this Dakota Access Pipeline being built, and so I'm really interested in that. Shoot. Okay, you guys, everything I said for that, it is about Awake. The documentary is called Awake, not that there's something in the water. Awake is about the Standing Rock Reservation, Dakota Access Pipeline, and the other form of media is There's Something in the Water, and that is more looking closely at Canada and how they treat the water sources and how the water gets contaminated in communities of color, particularly Black communities and Indigenous communities in Canada, more than, you know, white communities. So I really would like to take a look at both of those documentaries and read them. There's also one more book that I would like to try to get to, and it's a fairly short book, so I think it'll be really easy to fit in, is The Beadworkers by Beth Bechtold. And it's just another collection of short stories by Indigenous authors. So I'm really, really excited about that. I've read a couple great short story books this year, so I think it would just be another great book to add into what I've been reading. So that was my messy, not organized, not prepared TBR video. I feel like I just am terrible at TBRs because I never really exactly know what the book is about. I know I want to read it, and then I do a really bad job of explaining it to you guys. But I just really wanted to do this TBR video because I wanted to let you guys all know about the Indigenous Read-a-thon. It starts today, goes to the end of November, and November is Indigenous History Month, so make sure you look into that. So yes, so make sure you take part or at least check it out and, you know, try to see if you can put some more Indigenous authors on your reading list. I know that I am going to try even harder going forward to do that and make sure I make that a priority as well as other people of color communities on my TBR. So in the comments below, let me know if you are participating in the Indigenous Read-a-thon, and if you are, what you're reading, and I would just love to hear it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.